Yes.
Good evening and welcome to the new season of The Aesthetics Show, where we talk everything aesthetics every single week. My name is Dr. Marcus Mehta and I'm joined by my co-hosts down in London, Dr. Tristan Mehta and Dr. Emily McGregor. All three of us are from Harley Academy, the UK's largest aesthetic medicine training provider. We are live here on YouTube tonight and we will be for the next 7 weeks, every single Tuesday at 7 p.m. until the 22nd of December. As we are live, you can ask any questions you wish throughout the show and we'll answer them as we go along. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and you'll get updates when the shows go out and see exclusive content we produce here from the Academy itself. Also, for any of the show content you share on social media, remember to use our hashtag, which is #TheAestheticsShow. So what is this new season going to be all about? Well, the focus for this season is success. And more importantly, what is success in aesthetics? What does it really mean? Is it what your peers think of you? The conferences you feature at? Is it having the most followers on Instagram? Is it who has the happiest patients? Or, as some think, is it who makes the most money? Now, in this season, we've chosen some really exciting guests to feature on the show and share their journey with us to get to where they've got to. We've also got some industry experts that we'll be able to interview to find out a bit more about where does it all go wrong for some people when building a career and some key tips on avoiding those pitfalls. So going forward, the show will be broken into 3 key sections. We're firstly going to have the news, where we'll be doing a roundup of what has happened in the last week, keeping you up to speed on everything in the world of aesthetics. Next will be our feature section. And this, for particularly this season, will be where we have our guest interviews and talk about products and review different products that are new on the market. And finally, everyone's favourite part of our show, the digital anatomy drawing section and our live patient injection. Now for this week, we have our patient Lara, that some of you may have seen on the promotion for this episode. Unfortunately, due to lockdown this month, it does mean that our live patient injecting will not be able to happen. However, we've got some really interesting new innovative ways to bring you treatments every single week in a safe and COVID-free way. So what can you expect from us this season? Well, we have some really good guests lined up, and we start next week with one of my favourite doctors in the industry, Dr. Martin Kinsella, here on the show. He's a dual qualified doctor and dentist and has been in the aesthetics industry for 15 years, founding successful clinics across the country, and one of the things he does a lot of is bioidentical hormones and well-being in general. He's established his own lab and product line. There's a picture of Martin right here you can probably see on our live stream. And we'll be talking to him about his journey into aesthetics and what he believes makes for a successful career. So if you've got any questions in the meanwhile for Martin, drop me an email, drop us a message. Our Instagram handles for all of us are actually on the text right here. Or you can message Harley Academy directly on their Instagram channel too. So, for this week, to start things off, I thought it'd be nice to introduce ourselves and tell you a little bit more about our own story. And I'll start that off. So, originally I was a doctor working in the NHS. I could never really decide what I wanted to end up doing. I locumed quite a bit in A&E before going down the GP route eventually. But throughout my registrar years, I wasn't quite sure whether it's really what I wanted to be doing. I looked at my boss and I saw him working out his QOF scores and quality scores, and I was like, do I really want to be doing that? And I didn't. I found it quite unexciting. I didn't get a great feeling of job satisfaction from doing it. And my brother Tris was always telling me, no, come to aesthetics, it's so great here. And I was like, it's not for me at the moment. I'm going to do something different, right? So I took a career break and I thought, I'm going to do it properly. I did the postgrad diploma in dermatology at Queen's in London. And this got me quite interested in cosmetic dermatology and actually the difference you can make to people's self-confidence by improving the appearance of their skin. So finally, Tris convinced me, I joined Harley Academy, and despite wanting to admit it to him, was probably the best decision I actually made as part of my career to get to where I am today. Following that, I did a few different things. I worked at Dr. Rita Rakes' clinic in Knightsbridge, and that was an interesting experience because it didn't just show me what a busy clinic was like to work in that experience, but I think what it showed me was what is a good patient journey and experience that we can probably learn from. And that got me interested in the whole concept of clinics and training that we did with Harley Academy. And one thing led to another. And recently, myself, Tris and Emily, who were all on the show for this whole season, we founded a brand new and exciting clinic chain called Story Clinics. And I've put the Instagram handle for that right here, which you can go on. Unfortunately, you can't click it, but you can follow on us on Instagram and see what we're up to day to day. Now, I think for me, the hardest thing, because everyone asks what's the main challenge you had, for me, the hardest thing was pressure from my peers. And many of you listening can probably relate to this, because moving into aesthetics wasn't real medicine. It wasn't what I had trained to do, and becoming a Botox doctor was basically selling out, and it wasn't a real career according to a lot of my friends that did medicine. So the funny thing is, although day to day when I'm working in clinic, I might not be delivering life-saving treatments, making acute decisions in that environment. But actually what I find, although we're not making life-saving decisions, a lot of the stuff that I do day to day is truly life-changing for my patients. And for me, that gives me a massive sense of job satisfaction. And it gives me, what I love day to day, and what I do is why I love my choice. And that route to aesthetics is very varied, and for many of you listening have probably at some stage in that journey, and it can be different for everybody. And I think hearing it from different people is really an interesting way to learn and try and get some idea of a route that might work for you. So we're going to go over to London now. We're going to flip over on this camera here down to London, and we're going to speak to our other co-host for the Aesthetic Show, which is Dr. Emily McGregor. So how are you tonight, Emily? Good. So I thought what we could start with, Emily, for this brand new season, which is very exciting, is a little bit more about your story and all of the three of us, really, what's got us to where we are, and hopefully so the viewers are able to find that useful and learn some tips about where they might go next. So tell us a bit more about your story, Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really common question for everyone at Training Party Academy, actually, because as we always tell them, the first 6 months are the hardest, really. It's getting it going. And so, kind of a similar story to you, Marcus, actually, in as much as a hospital doctor. I was working in A&E and ICU. They were the only specialties I really liked, but I also really hated shift work. It was a really bad combination. I was quite torn for quite a while. And I was really feeling kind of personalised circumstances, maybe have a think about doing something else. Aesthetics wasn't something I knew an awful lot about at this point. I did my research into various alternative careers for doctors, and really became very interested in aesthetics. I did a lot of 1-day and 2-day training courses, spent a lot of money, unfortunately, back then. And I wanted to get a job in a clinic. So again, then Instagram wasn't a thing. I didn't know what it was. Just kind of getting yourself started and finding patients seemed like a huge hurdle. So I applied to lots of clinics. I made a CV. I explained my interest. I went in and spoke to people. And I was lucky to get a good job at Central London Clinic and build up my experience that way. I think the main thing that really helped me was I went all in. So I left the NHS. I spent all of my free time researching aesthetics, going to every event, every conference, reading every book, trying to meet people who can help me, and treating as many people as possible. So that if you're treating 10, 15 people a day, injecting 10, 15 people a day, and it's your main job, you build up experience and confidence quite quickly. Whereas I know for a lot of people it's a very slow start. So once you know it's for you, I do recommend really going all in with your time and commitment, because it does help. So I did that for a while, got to a point where I was quite comfortable, enjoying work, certainly earning more money than I was in the NHS. But for me, the difficult bit was actually how do I grow? How do I keep growing within aesthetics without being totally alone starting a business? And that's quite a challenging question. So I had always been interested in teaching, and I'd done a lot of medical teaching in my NHS work. So I started working with Kylie Academy as a trainer, doing content, and gradually over time that became my main job. And then we of course have our own clinic on site. Recently, I feel like I'm waiting 5 years to get a lovely clinic of my own, and but so that was my journey. So in terms of
challenge,
people, I think getting your numbers up, so there's something really to be said for, if you can, working for someone else when you first start out. I know the temptation is to start your own business and do it all your way, but you spend a lot of time doing that. It's actually hard, working out the market yourself and dealing with everything that comes with that. Whereas getting your first 500 filler cases done is super important, because after that you really start to enjoy it, because you're not stressed every time you're injecting. And I remember when I first started, I looked at people who were very confident, very competent, and really kind of relaxed into their aesthetics career. I was so envious. I was kind of traveling away trying to get there. So it's partly numbers, and secondly, some good supportive people, because it can be quite challenging if you're on your own and working with other organisations or a clinical team or an educational team or whatever network you have. Really, really helps.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's really interesting to hear, Emily, and I think from our viewers' point of view, it's a similar tale to what a lot of them will be going through as well. So that's really, really helpful. Well, Emily's going to be on the show tonight with us. She's going to be on the other microphone in London. So when Tris is doing our live treatment tonight, myself and Emily will be having a chat about how Tris is doing it mainly, and we'll have a chat. And so we'll be talking to Emily throughout tonight's show. So Emily, do you want to get Tristan on the stage and he can tell us a bit more about his experience and journey?
Yes.
Here we go. How are you tonight, Tris?
Hey, Marcus. Very well, thank you. I'm excited for our next season for the show.
Fantastic. Well, I thought let's start tonight off, Tris, with the new season about success, talking about loads of practitioners in this industry. Let's hear about your story. Where did you start? And let's talk about what was your main frustrations or challenge to getting to where you've got to today. I'm sure a lot of people are interested to hear this one. So I'll flip over to you now, and you tell us all about it.
Sure. So, Marcus, we have to explain our stories to our trainees when they train with us. And they're very interesting. Actually, very similar backgrounds. A&E was also my background, and I was working as an SHO in a middle grade in A&E once. I did my first one-day course in injectables, and I did that in 2013, and I still haven't seen that. And when I did that, I actually loved it. I did a classic weekend course, Saturday, Sunday, Botox and fillers over a weekend, and fell in love with aesthetics at the time. But of course, I didn't have the time to fully invest my attention, my energy into aesthetics, and I was still working as a junior doctor. But slowly, over time, I noticed how our sector changed, and even over the last, 5-10 years, there's been so much change in how practitioners are approaching aesthetics, how they get trained, what patients are looking for, and I became particularly interested in the education landscape of aesthetics. And at the time, there was the Health Education England review of the regulatory guidelines for getting trained in aesthetics. And for me, I wanted to build something, I wanted to create something, and I became really interested in how we can drive up the standards for training. So I had a small clinic on the side. I was working out of a room at a local med spa, and I was doing the injectables and getting my skills up. And at the time, I was thinking about how we could build a qualification standard for injectables. This was around 2015. At the same time, I enrolled onto the University of Manchester diploma in skin aging and aesthetic medicine. So I did my postgraduate study there, and we launched our Level 7 in 2016. And so since then, I've had a combination of working as one of the directors and managing the team at Harley Academy. I regularly teach 1 or 2 days a week, and then I have my private clients probably about 1 day a week at the moment. Some of my other clients, and obviously on Harley clients, you can see is my story clinic. And now I
We've just lost your audio there, Tris.
Wonderful, broad experience across different subjects, and there's principle as well.
Perfect. So we lost your audio for a second there, Tris, but it sounds like it's picked up again a little better now. So interesting story, and I'm sure a lot of our Level 7 students will understand that story and probably heard that story 1,000 times, but probably not as many times as I have heard it, but nevertheless, about Health Education England and the rest of that. So great, and it's good, I think, to get an introduction to us all before we start this new season off. Guys, if you've got any questions at all, you can write them in the comments box on YouTube, and we'll be able to answer them as we go. We're just having a bit of trouble with the mics in London. If you can turn the audio up a little bit, Josh, that'd be helpful just to get a bit more pickup, because some of the guys are struggling to hear. So, Tristan, tell us about tonight, because tonight I've mentioned what we're going to be doing on the show going forward. However, I think what will be useful is for the viewers tonight, we're going to be treating Lara, who's going to be a patient we've got in this evening, and she's going to be having a multi-mil liquid facelift. And we're going to be focusing tonight particularly on an area in the mid-face, and that's what I'm going to focus my anatomy section on tonight. So, how are you doing, Trish, in London?
1 second. Oh,
We've
audio.
had a malfunction with my microphone, so
Thank you.
it's going to swap.
There's a bit of an
Can you
echo,
hear
I
me?
think, down on the microphone there.
Thank you.
If you just give us a second while we sort out
Can you hear you?
the audio down in London. So tonight, anyway, I'll carry on. Tonight we're dealing with a patient called Lara, who's kindly come in to give it to the treatment tonight. We're going to be treating right from the upper face. So we're going to be going from temples right through into lower face as well. So we're going to start with temples, down into mid-face, and also treat the lower face. Now, many of you will have seen Lara on the promo shots that we've put on our Instagram. I'm going to be showing you a photo of Lara actually in a second and talking a bit more about the anatomical features that we need to focus on when we're treating Lara tonight. How's the audio situation in London?
I think we're there, Marcus. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah. It just needs to be turned up a little bit, I think, from an audio point of view. So just while you're getting set up...
Anatomy tutorial, Marcus, and we'll get the patient ready.
Yeah, perfect. So if you want to mute your sound in London, that would be useful. And let's talk now, guys, a little bit more about what we're going to be treating tonight. So I'm going to put a video up on my We're just going to split the screen back to where we were. So is there no sound at all now, guys? You can't hear anything at all.
The comments say no sound.
There's no sound at all at the moment, is there?
Yeah.
So there's no sound at all, that's fine. So I think in the context of this, I don't know why the sound's dropped out entirely. It was working perfectly till about 2 minutes ago. It seems to have dropped out from here and London. But I don't think you're able to do that, are you?
We can't control this output sound to YouTube at all.
Very strange.
If you can hear Tristan, then we're live sound.
Yeah, can you guys hear anything now?
Video's frozen as well.
Marcus, I think we have to call it a day.
It says someone's got videos frozen also.
Laura's still in a treated demo.
Tris, hold on. What's going on here? How weird.
Oh, now he's gone as well.
Hold on, I'll tell you what, I'm going to restart the stream. Let me restart the stream.
It's his internet, yeah.
Can
Marcus, it's your internet.
Shouldn't be.
Oh, wow.
Can you hear me? Sound is back. The sound is back. I believe we have the sound back.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear Josh in London as well? Okay, the sound has come back, so that's perfect. Someone says don't have sound, do have sound. I'm really sorry about the technical issues we're having tonight. That's great. Okay, perfect. The sound is back on. Right. So sorry about that, guys. Seven. So you got no sound again at all? No sound again. You can't hear me talking at all. Okay, let's have a look. So, can you? I can't hear anything. Yes, Josh, you're back.
Yes, Marcus, are you with me?
Yeah, I'm back, Tris. My sound was working just then, and then how are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Right.
Are we live?
Maybe someone said maybe we should try restarting it. Shall I finish this live stream and restart the live stream, Tris? You stay with me, Tris.
I don't know if you can do that.
Oh, someone said no. It's back. It's back. It's back. We're okay. The audio's come back now. So everyone can hear me, and can you hear London as well? It's back.
I'm in London.
Okay, Emily and I are talking from London. How you doing?
Okay, sorry about technical difficulties we're having, guys. I think it should be back now, and we should all be working, providing you can hear me. Okay, so let's just go back to London.
Okay. Well, I'm still here, Marcus. So
Let's go.
tonight.
Let's go, Tris. Let's do the treatment.
So
It's back.
I'll just stick to this camera.
No, we're good. Okay, guys, thanks for putting up with us. We're here, and I'm very excited to share with you a treatment tonight. We've got Laura who's joined us, and we had a consultation a week ago, and in particular, we are focused on how we can create this lovely, defined, beautiful cheekbone. And as you well described, Marcus, we're going to be talking about the anatomical zone of the preservation space and treating along the cheekbone. Alongside that, there's a few additional treatments I think that we should be looking at for beautification. So I'm just going to drop a few important landmarks. If we can, just take that. I'm going to draw on a few of the areas we've already discussed. So if we can zoom in a little on this, we've got really important and the temporal crest as well. So we identify these boundaries, and what we can see when we look at Lara from the front is that she has this lovely defined jawline, and as we look at the mid-face, we can afford to have a little more lateral projection to feminize entities by mid-face. And so the objective today is to show you a treatment. Normally, you'll see me do my supraperiosteal boluses along the zygoma. And in this instance tonight, we're going to be able to do the same treatment, but with a cannula. And the reason is I'm quite comfortable using a cannula in this case to create a very sleek, defined cheekbone, because I'm not interested in creating structural pillars of hyaluronic acid along the zygoma to create lateral traction across the midface, because my treatments aren't going to focus on the medial cheek, for example. We're not interested in reducing the definition of shadows or folds. And in this instance, I'm trying to purely create definition. And so in order to do that, we're going to use our cannula, going to pop into layer 4, and we're going to create definition along the cheekbone. That's the main thing that we spoke about in our consultation. Alongside that, what we start to notice is we start to get a little bit of downturning of the corners of the brow, and I'm going to treat Lara's right temple just to rejuvenate around the eye. There's also a subtle tear trough that we can treat. And then finally, just to extend along this really nice jawline that we have, I'm going to create a little bit of anterior projection in the chin. I'm going to show you my cannula technique for that. Does that sound good, Marcus?
Yeah, that's perfect. The audio is really good now, Tris. It's been flicked over to the mic on your face, so your Brittany mic is working fantastic.
Okay, perfect. Well then, let's have a show. And in light of that, so Emily, thanks for helping out. What I'm going to go straight into this cannula treatment along the cheekbone. If you can turn your face towards me, we'll use some Juvederm Voluma here, and the objective is to show you guys our anatomical approach to the midface. You okay, Lara? Mm-hmm. Feeling good? Yeah. Lovely. Turn this way a little more. That's perfect. Thanks very much. So first thing is to do a tiny entry point, and my entry point is just medial to the apex of the cheek. So I'm just going to enter here. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. And we're through the dermis. That's all we need to do in our entry point approach. My cannula is facing forwards. The exit port of the cannula is facing forwards because I'm trying to create this lovely anterior projection. And then let's go through some of the layers together. So as we go through the skin, we're now in the malar fat, the infraorbital fat pad here. And you'll see a little bit of pushing down, and you'll see the tethering there of the orbicularis oculi muscle. And the objective is to get just beneath that muscle, and this is the now I'm traversing above the periosteum, above the preperiosteal fat, and I'm in layer 4, and you can see the outline of my cannula, but it's not as discrete as it would be if it was in layer 2 in the subcutaneous plane. It's more diffuse, less defined, and that means that I'm in a layer deeper than the skin and the fat. I'm in layer 4, and here I can do a bolus just to know where my lateral point is, and slowly draw back my cannula.
So you're doing a medial entry point to treat the prezygomatic twist? Exactly.
And I'm just creating a touch more product at the apex where I exit. And that's it, Marcus. So this was a 0.4 mil treatment. And wow. I'm not even going to massage it because I want you to see this from the front. If you can face forwards. What we want to be able to see here, and if I can just move the lighting slightly so it takes the lighting off the apex. If you can do it on that side, Emily. Just turn the lighting slightly. A bit more. Lovely. That's it. And what we can see here is we're starting to create this lovely lateralized cheekbone. And
I don't want to massage this down because I've created lateral projection. What I want to do instead is just crimp on the underside, just to create even more high definition along that cheekbone, and particularly at the apex, I can do the same. And this is how, in our younger patients, if we want to create lovely definition and a really highly shaped cheekbone, we can achieve that with just one entry point without having to do boluses along the zygoma.
And so you treat medial to lateral when you're doing this. Just do you ever treat lateral to medial when you're doing the prezygomatic space?
So when I approach laterally to medial, I'm typically trying to address the medial cheek or the tear trough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely tend to approach medial to lateral when I'm treating along the cheekbone.
And like a beautification type treatment, really, we're looking at here, I guess.
Correct. So whilst we're here, if I can get another mil of Voluma, please. I'm just going to do a temple treatment just so I can show you the impact of temples. I know we're a big fan of temples here on the Aesthetic Show, and you've seen them many times.
One of Triss's favourite treatments so far this year, I think. Would you say, Triss?
When are we going to have our dedicated temple episode, Marcus?
Yeah, I know. To be fair, there is people asking about having you talk through all those layers. There is people asking for it.
Well, you know I'm ready. All right, gently open your jaw, just your mouth, just very gently. It's lovely, just relax. I'm going to find that sharp scratch. 1, 2, 3. Lovely. Onto the bone. Good aspirate. Bit of flowing is all you're going to hear now, Laura. That's perfect. Nice and still. So even in our patients that haven't meaningfully started what the volume loss that happens with aging, we can still get changes in the temporal and the periorbital areas that respond really well to revolumizing in the temple. And just, do 0.5 there.
I found that younger patients actually get better results in terms of lifting the turret of the brow from filler with the temple. So obviously the indication is often volume loss, but you need, the more volume loss, the more product you need to achieve any kind of significant result, particularly in raising the eyebrow, because there's less tension on everything. So for those that it's a sort of a cherry on the cake type thing. It's not normally your go-to first treatment for someone with minimal volume loss, but if you want to have it and can have it, it does work well in the younger age group.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree there, really. I think that's a good point, because often when we do it in the older age group, you don't quite get that much, do you, in the sense of tightness or lifting?
So what do you notice there, Emily?
Do I notice? Have a look straight at me. Just looks like a slightly wider eye.
Yeah. And from the front,
you can see more white of the eye.
Yeah. If we can just pan down slightly, Josh, you can see more of the mid-face alongside the upper face, and we can see that starting to really take shape now. And definitely we can see the canthus more laterally is elevated compared to this side, which is sloping ever so slightly down. The final treatment on this side, when we're talking about mid-face, guys, we have a specific sequence we like to follow. And look at this, you can see this lovely cheekbone here. When our patients have good fullness in the medial cheek, we don't want to overdo it. And in our young patients particularly, if they've got temporal volume that's been restored and there's still a slight under eye hollow, a tear trough perhaps, we can treat it then. In this case, and this is the learning point I think for today, if you put your chin down please, we can see a little bit of skin discoloration under the eye. And so it's tempting to think, oh, I can put filler there and I can do a tear trough treatment. In this case, when I'm looking, I don't see a step. I see the tear trough ligament, and I see where the medial sooph sits, which blends really nicely into her lid cheek junction and into her lower lid. I don't see what we would call a defect or an area where there's been volume loss. And so in this instance, we aren't able to treat a tear trough, and nor would we want to. And instead, if our patient is interested in addressing those that potential discoloration or pigmentation under the eyes, we have other treatments, and maybe Emily, you can talk us through what your approach would be if we had any skin. How would we approach pigmentary changes?
You're asking me to talk about dark circles under the eyes.
One of the hardest
thing to treat in aesthetics. Thank you very much, Tristan. I don't think this lady really would warrant treatment, to be honest. I think a touch of concealer would be all she might want, and a good night's sleep. So dark shadows under the eyes could be anything. So number one could be an actual light shadow due to a hollowing and a tear trough hollow, which as an injector is the one you want because you can quite easily fix it. It could be pigment from melanin, so from sun damage, from photoaging, etc. But it can also be like a hemosiderin. It can be due to like blood vessel breakage and leakage, which is an aging thing. Or it can be because you're especially in some skin tones, the skin under the eye is so thin, it almost has a translucent quality. And if you don't have particularly good circulation under there, you can essentially see through the skin. I always tell my patients, it's a bit like if I have water's clear, but if I put water into a cup or a bowl, it looks grayish or blue. It's the same kind of thing. You're kind of looking through the skin in the under eye area. So depending on what you think the cause is, there's all sorts of treatment options. There's laser treatment options. You can peel it if it's pigment. There's pigment suppressors. I'm a big believer in the simple things like retinol, a really good retinol, get better circulation, get rid of the pigment in the epidermis. But there isn't a magic fix, I don't think, to under eye dark circles. I'd be interested to know if anyone's found one actually. Marcus, ask the audience. One that I'm interested in but haven't got enough experience with myself yet, personally, to comment is carboxytherapy.
I think it's
by far the easiest is a hollow that can be fixed with a little bit of filler.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got a question here I've just put on the screen, which is what product are you using for the temples, Tris? Was it Voluma or Volux you went for today?
I used Voluma there for the temple. Shall we move on to a couple of lower face treatments, Marcus?
Yeah, let's have a look at the lower face. And if we can look in profile as well, there's quite a good angle actually of the chin and jawline, isn't there?
So what I want you to see here, guys, is the gonial angle. And in ladies, we have a more relaxed, more oblique angle. So the ascending ramus of the jawline is laid back. And what we can do here is just create a little bit of definition at the corner of the jaw. And then I'm going to show you how I would approach creating anterior projection in the chin. So the corner of the jaw, it has more than 5 layers because we have the parotid gland, we have the masseter here. And what I'm going to do is just do a bolus on the periosteum right at the corner. But if you go on the underside, you'll create downward projection. And what I'm trying to do is create a bit of anterior projection so you can really see it when you look from the front. You can also elongate the jawline by injecting the very thin part of bone posterior to the mandible. So I'm going to do a couple of boluses to demonstrate that. Turn this way slightly. That's lovely. Thank you, Lara. So this is the anterior injection, okay? Sharp scratch, 1, 2, 3. Down onto bone. Now, relatively safer area to inject, but we're still going to aspirate with our needle. And then we're just going to do 0.2 down onto the bone. Perfect. So that started to bring the jawline, the corner of the jaw anterior, and you can already see a bit more definition there. And now I just want to bring it backwards slightly. So what I'm going to do is approach posteriorly and just target the mandible from this direction. Sharp scratch.
It's one of my favourite injections. And again, you can do this on the aging patient as well, because they will lose their bone definition in this area.
Absolutely. So, onto bone.
How much product on this one, Tris?
Just going to do another 0.2.
So we're going for total 0.4 in the gonial angles. Is that your approach here, Tris? Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I would always put, 0.4 is a minimum, really, isn't it?
Perfect. And then
yeah,
we
you
can gently
quite a lot, don't you?
massage that down.
Yeah.
That's good.
So here we can create just a bit more high definition, and And this really goes alongside the kind of approach we're having of beautification and creating these nice points of reflex where the light will bounce off. And particularly these kinds of treatments, this day and age, when our patients want to look better in photos, for example, these are the ones that really help and address that. So finally, Marcus, let's move on to the anterior chin. I'm just going to put my cannula back on.
Yeah, perfect. So when you treat chins, there's different ways to do it, isn't there? And using Volux here, you're going to go for
Length do you want?
a cannular approach, Tris, rather than boluses, really.
Exactly. And so we'll have previously shown how we treat the chin with a needle.
Yeah.
And because, we're having a nice low trauma treatment today, we want to stay with a cannula. And turn this way slightly. Just going to be approaching the chin laterally. Make my entry point just here. Sharp scratch, 1, 2, 3. Lovely. So just through the dermis again. And then let's take a look at the chin, guys. So obviously, in ladies, the width of our nose and the width of our chin and the fullness of our lips should all match. And we have lovely full lips. We have a nice, narrow, feminine chin. And here we're going to do the same, and we're going to create projection. And if you can see from the side, we can afford maybe just 0.5 centimeter more projection. Is it purely anterior? No, it's also slightly inferior. And we have those 3 landmarks on the chin. We have our Pagonian, our Gnathian, and our Menton. We don't need to create inferior projection because our proportions in the lower third are lovely and balanced, but it's more downwards and anterior, so it's more towards this Gnathian projection that we're trying to create. And in order to do so, I have in mind where my chin wants to sit, and I'm just going to be approaching again with Juvederm Volux here, Marcus. And I've got my subcutaneous plane, okay? When you go over the front of the mentalis muscle, it gives way, and you get a little pop, just like this.
Yeah.
Here, I'm too anterior. Okay, that's not quite where I want to be. I actually want to be a little bit inferior to that, so we're just going to move along there.
So you're working
And I'm going
behind
to do
the
a little
mentalis.
bolus.
Is this behind the mentalis, Tris, you're treating when you're doing this?
This is in front for now,
Yeah.
and I've just created just 0.1 bolus in front, and I'm going to blend that out as I move back towards my entry point. So that's part 1. Part 2 is let's give it some deeper support as well. And so I approach, and this time I go behind the muscle, and you'll see the mentalis give way, little push there. And now I'm behind the muscle. And I'm also going to do another 0.1 deeper, and again, tail that out as I approach my entry point. And that's it. So this is a really low trauma way if you want to start treating the chin. Of course, we're going to do both sides. I've just done between my fingers on Lara's right. But if you can look from the side, what we can see is the continuation of the jawline all the way along towards the now more projected, more elongated jawline. And I hope that was interesting for viewers today, just to see Lara can see herself, and she's giving me a little nod and a smile.
Yeah.
How we can approach the chin in a slightly different way.
It also uses, I think you can get more projection with less product. I found that way. The kind of classic needle down to bone inject, I found you can get, more projection, less product, and you can mold the product a little bit better. So I really like doing it just as you have, actually, with some superficially, which I know is not the most common technique, I don't think.
Brilliant. So if we can just zoom out a little here, and we can take a look at the face between my hands. This is our beautification treatment for Lara this evening. We've created some lovely lateral projection. We've rejuvenated around the periorbital area with the temple, and you can see the lift of the right brow that we've achieved there. And we've created a little bit more definition. Importantly, I haven't tried to project the gonial angle too much laterally because she already has strong chewing muscle, and I'm trying to minimize the width in the lower third. So we put a bit more product moving posteriorly to elongate the jawline, and then along the jawline, we've just created this lovely angle moving all the way through to a slightly more projected chin.
That looks amazing. It looks really nice. That continuation of the jawline you can see right from the gonal angle to the chin now. Just that very subtle amount of filler with the cannula. It just does a really nice job of that, Tris. It looks great.
Thank you, Marcus.
So that's tonight's treatment, is it, Tris? Down that side of the face, the mid face and the low face.
Correct.
Perfect. So thanks for showing us that tonight, Tris. I think what we're going to do is we've got a couple of questions in the question box, a couple of questions I've got here as well. If we want to, thanks for having the treatment tonight, Lara. It's been great to have you on the show and to demonstrate some of those treatments that Tris has shown tonight. What we'll do is we'll take some photographs and share them with you guys after treatment, so you can see after the show, so you can see what the before and afters look like. And for now, me and Tris will have a chat about what up next. So, right, Tris. So, looked great that treatment tonight. How was everything doing that? All right? No problems at all?
Yeah, we're all good here, Marcus.
Perfect. Okay, so when you're treating the mid, you did a lot of cannula work there really tonight, didn't you? Really, no needle work at all in that sense, apart from the temples. Now, someone's asked a question. I'll just put it on the screen so everyone can see it. Which is, when carrying out temple filler, I understand you have to inject on the periosteum. Can filler migrate and cause an occlusion? So this is the fear around temple filler, I guess, is the risk of vascular injury or occlusion. How can you reassure yourself, mainly, I guess, when you're doing these treatments, so that you know you're in a plane that actually is safe and you feel comfortable doing these treatments day in, day out?
Yeah. So look, the first thing to say about temples is let's only start venturing towards those areas once we can really understand the anatomy, what's happening there, and the major blood vessels. The worst thing that happens in our world is where practitioners are taught how to do something and they think that's enough to go out and do it. And the definition of being taught how to do something is the bar is very low. And our definition of that is our trainees should be able to really explain back to us why they're doing a certain treatment. And when it comes to the temples, that involves, unfortunately, really understanding probably one of the most complex zones of the face. And for example, the periosteum in the temple isn't actually down on bone. It's actually reflected above bone, and it sandwiches a fat pad. And actually the bone therefore has the muscle, the temporalis, on top, and the deep arteries run within the temporalis muscle, and we're actually injecting directly onto cranium, which can then be an intramuscular product deposition. And we need to know exactly, if we're down on the cranium, where we can be to avoid those major vessels. And there are other areas of the temple that we can target to address different things. We're definitely going to have to do a more specific episode on the temple.
I think it does look that way, doesn't it? It does look that way. Fantastic. Well, that is tonight's show, really just explaining what we're going to be covering in the next season coming up. Seeing our live treatment tonight, you'll be able to see more of the treatment we've done in little clip in clip format on our social media, also on our YouTube channel. So please make sure you have subscribed by clicking the link below. We'll be back here next Tuesday at 7 p.m. again. And as I mentioned, we'll be doing that every single Tuesday until the 22nd of December. Now, we've got a great range of guests coming in over this season. Next week, we've got Dr. Martin Kinsella, who'll be joining us. As I mentioned, if you have any questions at all for him or want to know anything about his journey through aesthetics, how he got to where he got to, or anything really about himself, you can just drop us a message either on our Instagram, on mine or Tris's, or on the Harley Academy Instagram too. We'll collate those questions and we'll ask Martin them next week. So I hope that's been useful for you guys tonight, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulties that we had. It seems to be working absolutely fine now, which is great to see. But from us here in Southall and in London, have a good evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Marcus.